Okay, today we're making a pot of pinto bean soup. Now what I did, and I always have done this way, you don't have to do it overnight, but I've always done it. I find that it gets my beans very clean, and if you'll notice right now the water is pretty muddy looking. That's why I soak them overnight. I put a couple tablespoons full of baking soda in the pot and put warm water in it. Let them soak overnight. This is to wash them, get them clean, remove any debris. Of course, before you put your beans in the pot, you should go through them and sort them. Make sure that there's no stones or gravel or anything like that in it. Pull out anything that doesn't look like a good bean. I've already done that, and they've soaked overnight, and now I'm going to drain the old water off of them and put them on to boil. It's a pretty simple process. Right now I'm just draining and washing the beans, and what I do is I pour it through a colander. That allows me to catch any beans that fall out of the pot. Okay, and then what I can do is just throw those beans back in and set this back down in here and put the water on again to rinse the beans. Now the beans at this point are still hard. They have not done any cooking, but I wash them, and I've always found that really one time was pretty much sufficient if you let them soak overnight. But some people like to wash them more than one time. Well, I use water that's comfortable, warm. It doesn't have to be any particular temperature, but I swirl the beans through the pot, make sure that the water coming off of them is now clean. Drain all of that old water off of there. You've washed all the baking soda out of the water. Okay, and now you've got them clean. Okay, what you do is you add fresh water to them. I always like to cover my beans because some of the water is going to boil off. I like to cook my beans slowly. So I usually double the depth of my beans and then add a little extra. Right now the water is probably double the depth of the beans, so I've added a little bit extra. In this pot, now this is a large pot, I've got almost half a pot of water. The water is coming up to about this level. The beans are only at about this level. So I've at least doubled the depth of the beans and probably a little bit more. Now they're going on the stove. Okay, I've got the beans on the stove now. I put them on a fairly high temperature at first. They should heat up. You may have to stir occasionally. I can't just put heat on an electric burner. I have to turn it way up and get it up to temperature before I can do anything. I put my beans on. I add some salt. Salt helps the water to boil. I stir the beans, and during this first stage you stir your beans often because you don't want them to stick and burn. But you need to let them come to a boil. After they've come to a boil, you're going to turn the temperature down to a lower temperature and let them cook for an extended length of time. I've always enjoyed letting them cook for about 4 hours minimum. Usually by that time they're pretty soft and squishy, and they make a good bean soup, or just plain pinto beans if you want to drain some of the water off of them. But we're going to add some pork to it after they start boiling. It doesn't have to be done until then. It's not going to take that long to cook. The pork will cook quick. Now, I particularly like to use hog jowl bacon. You've probably heard of things like hog jowls on shows like the Beverly Hillbillies and that sort of thing. That's what this is. You can store it frozen. I took it out yesterday and let it thaw overnight. This is what I've got. Now, I don't care for the sliced bacon. I prefer to have the whole chunk and then cut it myself into larger pieces. But this is my method. If I could have gotten that one, I would have, but all they had at the store was the sliced salt pork belly in this case. Pork jowl bacon, sliced pork belly, salt pork, those will all work. Just plain regular bacon, if nothing else, will work fine. This is what I use. It doesn't matter the brand, but this is what they had available at my local store. Once I get that thawed real good, which it is thawing pretty well now, it's not bad, much better than it was last night, I will put that in the pot with the beans, but they're going to cook for a little while before I worry about that. But for the very beginning, while the beans are just starting to heat up in the water, you have to stir them. Keeps them from sticking to the bottom of the pot. It'll take a little while for the water to get up to temperature because that's quite a bit of water in there. But that's how hard it is to cook pinto beans. Other than putting in the salt pork, there really isn't much you have to do until you're ready to eat them. Pretty simple, huh? We'll be back after they've cooked for about 4 hours, because that's about all that's going to happen, and they do get stirred on occasion. Once they heat up and start boiling, you're pretty much done with them until they finish cooking. Back to you shortly. Okay, so I've got the salt pork belly bacon open. Like I say, it's already been sliced, so I don't have to worry about slicing it. And it's going to be much thinner slices than what I'm peeling off. There's probably 7 or 8 slices in here. Maybe not that many, but because it's pretty thick slices. But I'm not worrying about separating each individual slice. It's going to cook long enough, it will be done. So I just go ahead and peel off 2, 3, 4 strips at a time, whatever I happen to get hold of, because it will separate on its own. So if I put in a thick slice like that, and there's 4 or 5 slices in there, which there probably are at least 3 or 4 here, I see 3 slices. If I don't take it apart, it's not a problem because it will eventually fall apart anyway, just from cooking. Now I go ahead and put that in. Because I came in and took the lid off of it, it stopped the boil, but it's not far from boiling, so it's already scorching that, and it's adding fat but also flavor to the beans. I will recover it and allow it to go back to boil. I will stir it one more time before I leave it again for a while, It's been on cooking for approximately 2 hours. Not quite 2 hours. I'm going to let it cook for at least another 2 hours. And even maybe longer than that. I'll get back with you on the next roundup here. Okay, beans have been on cooking for around 4 hours, pretty close to. I believe they're done. Everything appears to be. The bacon is pretty well cooked up. I would say the beans appear to be fairly well cooked. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some off on a spoon like this here so I can check them out. They're going to be hot, so you don't want to just pick one up and start squeezing it or bite into it. But here you have what they appear to be. And if you tell by grabbing a bean and you can squeeze it and it smashes in your fingers, they're done. They're nice and soft. Still have a little bit of meat feeling to them, but they're pretty soft now. I'm going to go ahead and eat this spoonful, excuse me. Oh yeah, they taste just fine. So the beans are done. I can turn them off now. Okay, now I've always found that the beans are better the second day. It's much better when they're reheated. I don't understand why that is, but a lot of things are that way. But I'm going to turn it off and let it cool down for a little while. It's too hot to eat anyway. In the time that this is cooling down, I am going to take care of a couple other things. While these were cooking, I made some cornbread muffins. They came out looking very nice. We'll go into the cornbread another time. But these came out looking very nice, and I prefer to make them like cupcakes in the little papers. They're easier to handle rather than having to cut them into the tray, because I don't like taking knives to my cake trays, that kind of thing. So this makes it a little easier for me, and I think they come out very well. So we'll get into doing cornbread at another time, but I thought I'd show you that. And while I'm waiting on these to cool, I will be chopping up some onion. And I like onions and shredded cheddar cheese on my beans, although it isn't necessarily a requirement. But it's just a serving suggestion. If you like this, please subscribe. Check out my other videos. I think you'll enjoy them. Thank you. And here is the finished product in a bowl ready for serving. You'll notice the cheese and onions on the bowl along with the cornbread muffin, and I'm ready to eat. Thank you. Y'all have a great day, and come back and see another video.